I kept speaking about it, people started sort of coming forward to me with their own stories. Something at my child's school made me really uncomfortable. I'm not sure what college to send my daughter to because I heard that there was some Israel hostility on campus. Things like that kept creeping up, and the stories became more and more um, uh, troublesome and urgent. And then in 2020, my synagogue was attacked with a baseball bat, the glass door. And it was during the Black Lives Matter protests. And I say that just to give some context, because there was a great deal of destruction that night of the protests in the city. So I'll never know what the attacker had in their heart. Was this targeted towards us specifically as Jews? Was it just a part of a night of larger aggression about other problems in our world? But for me, seeing the shattered glass of my synagogue broke my heart. It was reminiscent of other historic attacks against the Jewish people. And at that moment, I decided, I need to take my message wider. I think that as congregational rabbis, our platform is incredible to be with people, to hear people, to, speak out. But there are times where we need to reach out, beyond our immediate congregations. And I felt that this was one of those urgent moments.
You talk in the book about microaggressions and the little things, as you just said, that you don't. What is this? Should I worry about this? You're like our radar is up a little bit, and that led, of course, to some of the bigger questions that you write about. Talk about how even these little things how we're starting to creep in. Like, what are some of the things that you were seeing aside from college campuses?
Sure. So, small things. I was working out in the gym with a partner, and she was telling me a story about somebody, and she said to me, who that person is. She's Jewish, but pretty. To me, hello, big Jewish star. She knows what I do. She knows about my life. Um, Obviously, the implication is you can't be both. Those two things are not consistent with each other, not Jewish and pretty, Jewish but pretty. Small comments like that, I think, are often very revealing, and they're very hard for us to know how to address. Do you make it really uncomfortable with your friend or your coworker or your supervisor? Do you call them out? And I think at this point, at this moment, Jews are more likely to say, I'm not sure what you meant, but I do want to let you know how that made me feel. But we're seeing these sort of microaggressions, what I call in the book, the narrowing of the Jewish people, the typing of us, the sort of pushing us into this one single dimensional way of looking, being, and acting, is really a problem that we need to push up against. So I'm not here for microaggressions because I think often they portend a much larger problem.
Yes, which of course is, the most unthinkable macroaggression you could ever imagine, or that I could have possibly imagined. In the book, in the chapter about Israel, you conclude with sort of three tacks that we could take, knowing the history and everything that's going on now. Wait, hold on. And I'm wondering how you feel about it, given what's happened. Right. So how can we fight Israel-based anti-Semitism? You say, in my mind, there are three options. Our first option is not to fight it. Instead, we can leave. We can leave the institutions, organizations, and universities that are making it increasingly clear they don't want us. We can start our own institutions, our own climate change advocacy groups, blah, blah, blah. If you are not Jewish but support Jews existing in America, you can join us and help us build these new structures. We need you. And then fast forward, then there is the second option. We can stay. We can try to change this trajectory from within. We can send our children to these colleges and help them represent as Jews. We can speak up and speak out. We can counter protest and counter program. We can remind people that just as we have every obligation to fight for dignity and justice for others, we also have every right to be a part of that work. You say this is not a small ask these days. And then finally you say, and then there's option 3, do nothing. We like to say there are no wrong answers, but in this case, there is one wrong answer. Doing nothing is the outcome we absolutely cannot tolerate. We cannot pretend this problem is on the periphery when it is pervasive and appalling. Ignoring it is enabling it. Denying it is helping it flourish. Go from there.
Um, it's a very intense moment to have this conversation. I'm so glad we're having it, but please forgive me if I'm emotional. I'm very emotional right now.
How can you not, how can we not, all of us, be emotional? I mean, for context, because for people listening to this long after this is aired or whatever, this is now just 1 week. Is it even a week and 2 days after the horrific attack, massacre, terrorist, bludgeoning, just hostage taking situation from Hamas against Israel, one from which the entire country and particularly the Jewish community worldwide is reeling. And to your earlier point about thinking anti-Semitism was sort of over, this is the biggest, most horrific and unthinkable thing that has happened in many of our lifetimes, particularly the millennials you talk about in the book. But even for me, I'm 47. Of course, I've spent my life learning. And when you talk about smashing the door, I'm like, Kristallnacht. Like everything has a corresponding event in history that we've learned over and over again. And I think that is why this is one of the many reasons why this is so terrifying, because we know what happened next and what the start was and what it could lead to, and all of that. So this is the context into which we are discussing anti-Semitism in general, and where you saw it just whenever you wrote this, like a year ago, to where it is today, and how prophetic this ended up being.
So yes, in the book, I described 3 different approaches for diaspora Jews to respond to anti-Israel hate. The first is to leave, and I mean that both literally and metaphorically. Jews leave places, right? That's how my family got here. It's probably how your family got here, and it's happened to us over time, both by our own volition, but also from expulsions. So the Jews of France are physically leaving right now, for example, and doing mass immigration waves to Israel. We can leave. We can leave our physical places, but we can also leave our institutions. Many of these institutions have made it clear that it is not a welcome space for Jews, that they've diminished the ability for Jews to be able to feel like they can be Jewish, do something as simple as wear a Jewish star, share their love for Israel openly, and we can start our own institutions. There's plenty of precedent for that. The Jews of the Roman, when the temple was destroyed, the Jews kept going. We changed our whole way of life, our whole way of Jewish being. When Jews were expelled from Spain, we went to Israel. They wrote Kabbalah Shabbat, which you and I are still saying in shul every week. There's plenty of precedent for Jews starting new initiatives, new institutions, and building our own way. That's option 1. Option 2, and I've seen a great deal of this in the aftermath of these horrific terrorist attacks, is staying and fighting. So I'm blessed to have many Israelis in my American community, and they're incredibly active and joined by American Jews and non-Jews in raising their voices, organizing against institutions that they feel are exacerbating hate speech, exacerbating anti-Semitism. And that's another option. Let your civic leaders know where you stand. Fundraise for Jewish causes. If you're not Jewish, call a friend and say, how can I help? Get involved. And I think we will do both of those strategies right now. The one strategy that I greatly caution against is to do nothing. Mm-hmm. Doing nothing is being complacent. Doing nothing is allowing anti-Semitism to flourish. And we simply cannot afford that at this moment.
How are you talking to the congregation about what happened? How are you processing this? How are you personally handling this? How do you get up and do the everyday things and hold the fear and the everyday? I think that is something everybody is struggling with right now. How to do we do our normal things? How do you hold both? So how are
Mhm.
you sort of holding both, and how are you communicating, and just how are you doing?
The first thing I want to say is that there are levels of crisis here. And my heart, first and foremost, goes out to all the families of the victims and the hostages, everyone in Israel that is struggling at this moment, and that's its own level. Um, for me, as a diaspora Jew and as a leader, I would say I'm doing poorly like most of us are. But I'm continuing. We have to keep going. The way I'm talking about this in my congregation, for me, it's always about reaching back towards Judaism. We have suffered many, many times before. We've suffered recently. We've suffered in the ancient past, and it's all there. If you look at Tanakh, at the Hebrew Bible, there are entire books dedicated to this. There's Lamentations, there's the book of Job, there are Psalms of comfort. For me, that's where my strength comes from. Our wisdom tradition and our history. And I think it's also a very important moment to put down your phone if you can and be with each other, be in community. Um, we listen to each other, we grieve with each other, we embolden each other, and we need to lean into Judaism. You know, Hamas would like to eliminate the Jewish way. We can't let them do that. So every time I feel a sense of panic and dread, which is a lot of times, I do a Jewish thing. you know, give tzedakah, light the Shabbat candles if it's time, like call a friend, visit the sick, lift up the fallen, fulfill a mitzvah, a commandment. Um, we need to continue our particular way now more than ever.
Do you feel unsafe? Like, do you
Yes,
feel unsafe walking into temple every day?
yes, and no. So, yes, I feel unsafe. Of course, I feel unsafe. Look what's happened. It is not, of course. Um, However, we keep going. We have to show up. We have to be there. And we have security. Unlike Israelis, we do not live in arm's reach away from a murderous terrorist organization. And now more than ever, I feel like it's essential to show up in public as a Jew.
Who should be reading this book right now?
I mean, anyone that's curious about how to help the Jewish people. I think the book will give you a sense of history, but it's not a history book. I think the book will give you a sense of the state of anti Semitism here and now, what's led us to this point, what Jews are facing every day. And hopefully, it will give us the opportunity to fight against it in a clear minded, emboldened fashion.
And people who are listening and feeling compassionate but are not Jewish, what can they do to help?
So many things, and it's essential. Jews are a tiny minority. We cannot fight this fight alone. We will not win without the support of others. Um, you can ask a Jewish person, how are you doing? What can I do? You can give money to any of these important causes, and you can speak out in your own organization. What we're seeing is sort of a growing public complacency um, for the Jewish people, and in some cases, just a lack of support and middling responses to these horrible attacks. And it's not acceptable. So if you can be an ally in your school system, in your workplace, in a civic organization of any kind, I think that that will go a long way. I know I've had friends reach out to me that aren't Jewish, and it's just deeply reassuring.
What are you most afraid of, and what is the thing that is keeping you going the most?
I'm most afraid of Hamas. That's what I'm most afraid of. They're a murderous terrorist organization. Um, I am, what's keeping me going? So many things. My fierce belief and love for the Jewish people. We are the eternal people. It's who we are. I've dedicated my life to the study of the Jewish people, the support of the Jewish people, love for the Jewish people, and so many of us have. So I think I'm emboldened by the strength of our community, by the passion that we've shown, the grit that we're showing, the unity, the solidarity. Um, and just as always, now, but always, I'm fueled by the sort of brilliance and divine nature of our Torah, of our tradition. Um, so there's really nothing that is going to stop us from fighting this.
And sorry to keep asking you tactical questions, but I think a lot of
Yeah.
people are looking for specific answers for all the Jewish people out there who are processing this, understanding the sort of new landscape and reality of life, of how people feel, people who are feeling very betrayed by people who are siding with opposition. And that's, another level of sort of emotion a lot of people I think today are going through. What is the counsel for them? What are the most helpful things that we can all do, both to cope, but really to help fortify the Jewish people, to keep our values strong, to how should we be speaking out? How should we be supporting? Like, give us a roadmap here.
Sure. So these are my priorities. One, I give resources, however much or however little I can, to organizations that are on the ground in Israel. So, like I saw that Bloomberg was matching donations to Magen David Adom, which is like the Israeli Red Cross. For me, that was easy. Someone asked me to do that, click, 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 done. Um, do that. I like to support Federation. They're very set up here and also on the ground in Israel. I was able to speak at their rally last week that they put together, and 20,000 of us showed up in New York, in an instant. It was remarkable. The mayor was there, the governor was there, So I like to support them, and they're doing incredible work. So the first level is like supporting things, actions that are happening in Israel. If you feel compelled to do that, is something that for me is top of mind. The second thing, which I think is very much on the minds of Jewish Americans these days, is what do we do here? How do we cope with what you're describing here? A sort of landscape that's newly revealed to some people, and a shifting of a narrative that I think some people are very uncomfortable with. One, you can't fix everything. Okay. So you need to just know this is one step at a time. And there are two steps here that we can do at home. One, double down on Judaism. It doesn't matter if you've never done a Jewish thing before. It doesn't matter if you went to Hebrew school 3 times and then you quit. It doesn't matter if, who you are. If you're Jewish, now is the time to engage in Jewish practice and behavior a little more. So pick one thing and try it. One easy thing. The second thing to do is to observe the landscape and assess where you might have leverage. You might have some leverage in your school system. You might have some leverage in your workplace. You might be a writer and be able to write something. I'm not sure. I know a lot of your people are moms. Like, you have a lot of leverage in your family, use it. Those are the two things I would say. Do something Jewish and use your leverage where you have it.
How do you feel about Future books. What would the next book be to follow up? We need to talk about anti-Semitism. What do we need to talk about now?
I don't even know what the next hour is going to be, Zibby.
I'm not
Because
asking for an actual book. I'm saying
yeah,
theoretically. I'm not saying go to your study and start writing. Just saying, what do we need to talk about? What else? What would the follow-up be?
that's a great question, and I'll think about it. I'm not really entirely sure. For me, I think it's about more broadly about Jewish American identity. That there's a lot of space there to develop what it means to be a Jewish American today. And that's within the context of anti-Semitism, but it's also beyond the context of anti-Semitism. Um, and that's where my life is and my heart.
Amazing. Um, any last thoughts for anyone going through this, or who maybe they're listening to this months ahead and who knows what will have happened in the interim? Um, what thoughts of yours do you want to get out there?
Most important thing is to have people to talk to. Be in a community. I think that helps process. I think that if you live on the internet, that will give you a great sense of anxiety that feels interminable, overwhelming, and unresolvable. And it will also give you a shallowness of existence. 3 lines is not enough lines to talk about what's happening here. Um, and it's misleading. It warps things. So I think if you're a kid, march yourself into Hillel. If you're a college campus, find a Jewish youth group, find a synagogue community, a sports team, a friend group, whatever, where you can be yourself in person and see somebody else's humanity. If you're a mom, like, you know what to do, you're doing it. Call all your mom friends, reach out to your book clubs, go to your synagogue, like, I think moms are incredible in this moment. And I think the key thing to do is things will continue to happen. This will get more difficult on many levels. There will be, very, very difficult moments for so many people in the future. And it's very sad and heartbreaking. And I think when those things happen, you need to be able to have people to talk to already. So make your communities now.
I love that. Rabbi, thank you so much. Thank you for talking today. Thank you for all the work you do. Thank you for this book. Um, could not have been more timely. I wish everybody would read it. So
Me too.
thank
Thanks
you.
so much,
And hang in
Zibby. Good
there.
luck to you.
Thank you. You too. Bye. It's over now.